Welcome everybody, one and all, to this week's live stream. I'm gonna give you an update so we can let more people get in. First of all, I'd like to say Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Today is Mother's Day in the United States, but actually, officially, fun fact: Mother's Day is actually celebrated here in Mexico on May 10th. So yesterday was officially Mother's Day in Mexico. Of course, it's officially Mother's Day in the United States today. And also in Mexico, they sometimes celebrate on Sunday too. But actually, May 10th is Mother's Day in Mexico. So, fun fact. I just thought I'd let you guys know. Happy Mother's Day to all you mothers. Happy Mother's Day from yesterday. And happy Mother's Day to everybody today. And so, in Canada too. Blaine, thank you for letting me know. I'm not very knowledgeable on Canada. Hey, Stephanie. And welcome, Landon. Welcome, Blaine, to this week's live stream. Like I said, just a fun fact. As far as what's been going on, we're pretty much the same. We've been busy with agendas and doing different things. But this week, I'm going to talk about, I think it's going to be a little bit of a continuation of the corruption question here in Mexico. And the reason why I kind of related to the corruption is just to give everybody a background on what happened or what's going on, why I thought about this, about laws being suggestions, right? And I've mentioned it before on my live stream before. Hey, Anna, welcome. I mentioned it in my live stream before that there's a YouTuber out of Merida that's his favorite phrase. Hey, Mexico's great. Mexico's free. As a matter of fact, over here in Mexico, laws are more like suggestions. They're not really laws. Okay, even though they're on the books. The reason why I brought this up is I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I'm being spammed by bots, but I've been getting, I have kind of replied to some of them, but I have also had to kind of hide. Like I told everybody, and I tell everybody on my channel, I have no problem hiding nasty comments. If you want to come on to my YouTube channel just to be nasty, just to argue, just to be mean, just to say mean things to other people, because it's not only me, I will hide you and I will delete your comments. I don't put up with that. I do this for free, and I'm not making money off of this, so I don't need to appease anybody. If you don't want to subscribe, don't subscribe. If you want to unsubscribe because I deleted your comment, unsubscribe. Because I'm not here to win a popularity contest, okay? I'm not on YouTube to win a popularity contest at all. But I've been getting a lot of spam, and even from people writing in Spanish. Maybe they're Mexicans that, I don't know, because of what's going on in the political situation, think they're going to say something mean to the Americans on my channel. And so I get a lot, I've been getting spammed with a lot of comments. Not necessarily nasty, but more, and actually this hasn't happened in a long time, and these are on old videos. So that's why I said I don't know if they're bots or what they are. But what I'm getting, and it seems to be one comment after the other, and it actually, one of the ones that gets a lot of popularity was my tip video, okay? And what I want to make very clear about my channel is that one of the things that I try to do is let you guys know what the rules are here in Mexico. What is the law? What's the legal ramifications? What are the rules? And the problem that I see on social media, the problem that I see on YouTube, especially those that are trying to win a popularity contest, make money, it's sort of like, I'm going to tell you what you want to hear. Come to Mexico, everything's great, everything's fine and dandy, everything's perfect. And I'm not here to discourage you and saying everything's not perfect, because I feel everything's perfect for me. But what happens is they kind of try to glorify a lot of things, and it gets a little bit out of hand sometimes. And or when I say there's a law that does this, Actually, this person has responded to me a couple of times. Oh, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't know. He's ridiculous, and it's not a contest of who knows more, or I have a lawyer. My lawyer told me this. Look, I'm not here to win a popularity contest, like I said, and this other person that in Merida he's trying to win a popularity contest because the more subscribers, the more revenue and everything else. And like I've said before, more power to him. If he's a hustler, making money, go for it. But these comments, and I'll give an example, for example, on the tip. And I want to make very clear, what you do with my information is up to you. Whether you want to follow the rules, not follow the rules, or your friend told you can get around the rules, or you've gotten around the rules, I'm not here to judge you. And hey, Terry, how's it going? I'm not here to judge you. And I'm not here to complain and tell you that you need to follow the rules because that's the law. Everybody has their own choice to do what they want to do. Okay? But I am here to deliver you the information. I am here to say that, okay, well, maybe a rule's not enforced, or maybe a rule is not commonly enforced or whatever. Hey, Sandra and Blanca, welcome from Colorado. Maybe a rule is not enforced here, but the problem I see in Mexico and what I've experienced, and actually personally experienced, is that sometimes there's a lot of rules that the government, law enforcement may be lax on. But the problem is that, hey, Alana, the problem is that when you don't follow the rules, if the police, the government decides to follow the rules, it's kind of an exaggeration, okay? You've got one side that says, oh, well, we hardly check this, we hardly do this, we don't. But when we check, it's to the other extreme, to the letter of the law. I'm going to give an example, and this is just an example of when I was taking out plates. My wife and I, we registered our marriage here in Mexico, thinking, okay, it's a lot easier than getting an apostillized marriage certificate, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to register our marriage in Mexico. Well, the notario, and he did the correct thing. We gave them our marriage certificate. He had it apostillized, and he did the whole thing. So I have a marriage certificate out of Monterrey, Mexico with my wife. And we have this marriage certificate. But the thing is when we got married, she's a naturalized citizen. So when we got married, she used her name that she uses in the United States. And here in Mexico, you're born with your name, and you keep your name all the time. You don't change it. You don't change it like you do in the United States. But this also happens with a lot of people that naturalize in the United States. They drop their second last name because here in Mexico, you have your first name, maybe a middle name, then you have your dad's last name, and then your mother's last name. So my name would be Ernest Eugene Baca Diaz, okay, officially here in Mexico. But my birth certificate says Ernest Eugene Baca. My driver's license says Ernest Eugene Baca. My passport says Ernest Eugene Baca, okay? So what happens now? They ask me my second last name, and and you might come across this in Mexico. What's your second apellido or your second last name? Well, if you don't have one, and sometimes I use it because they need it on the form, and you can't get anywhere past it on the form. But officially here in Mexico, my name is Ernest Eugene Baca, not Ernest Eugene Baca Diaz. All my paperwork says Ernest Eugene Baca that I that I did my permanent residency with, blah, blah, blah. Well, when my wife in the United States, she's known with her first name and her last name, but not with her second last name. Okay? And Lance, how's it going? Consulates often use marriage names on Mexican Mexico does not. Yes, exactly. The United States does. Now, my wife has her married name in the United States, which is my last name, which doesn't really matter here in Mexico because she's known by her name that she was born with. That's officially what she is here. But what happened was her last name, when she got married to me, didn't have her second last name because in the United States, we don't use second last name. So when we got married, our marriage certificate says Ernest Eugene Baca got married to my wife's name, but with the first last name only. So when they registered our marriage, and they couldn't register our marriage under her second last name because the marriage certificate specifically stated her name, first name, and last name. Okay, and I know I'm making this long thing, but just so that you can understand it. So when we register our marriage, well, we have a marriage certificate. So technically, my wife and I are not really married here in Mexico, even though we actually registered the marriage here in Mexico. Excuse me. So what happens? We've been carrying around this marriage certificate, and we've actually done official government transactions with our marriage certificate. Because for some reason, whoever the government official was didn't look to see that she didn't have her second last name. And her name on the marriage certificate does not match her INE, which is the voter registration card, or which is her official ID here in Mexico. So I was going to go get license plates on the car. And of course, she uses her Mexican ID, and we have my utilities under the name of my wife, not under my name. So they needed a proof of address, but for license plate, the proof of address has to come out to the same. In other words, if I go apply for license plates here in Guanajuato, this is here in this state, doesn't matter in the other state. In Monterrey, we had no problem. But if I want to register a car here, the comprobante de domicilio, the proof of residence, the utility bill has to be under my name, or I have to have a driver's license from Guanajuato, which I didn't at the time because Monterrey was my official place until now. So what happened? I go show up, and they said, "Oh, not a problem. All you need to do is we'll get a copy of her voter registration, and she can write a carta de poder." It's kind of like a power of attorney, but the power of attorneys here work for each process. So she basically says, I give Ernest Baca permission to use my utility bill as proof of address because we're married. Okay? But then I also had to take my marriage certificate here in San Miguel to show that we were married because she said in the carta de poder that we were married. What happened? I show up, they start looking over my paperwork, and she says, "I'm sorry, I can't help you." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" "Well, your marriage, you say you're married, you have a copy of her ID, and her ID has her first name, her first last name, and her second last name. And your marriage certificate only has her first last name." And I'm like, "Yeah, but we're married, and look, it's at least got one last name." "No, we aren't sure. We cannot prove that this person on this marriage certificate is the same person on the bill or on the same person on the ID because it's not the same exact name." Needless to say, I left without a license plate. But in Monterrey, I got my license plates with no problem. And in other things that we did in Monterrey, nobody asked us. We even bought property with our marriage certificate showing that we were married. So this is a perfect example that I could tell you, "Oh, don't worry that the names don't match." They never look at it. Well, they never looked at it for 7 years until I got here and somebody looked at it. So my point is that maybe rules aren't followed all the time, or rules are very lax in a lot of times. And there was a lot of lax rules. There's a lot of lax rules here when it came to immigration. Not anymore. It's getting less lax, might say. But they were very lax on immigration. Even if you were here illegally, a lot of times it's like, oh, let me check your paperwork. Oh, you're here illegally? Just take care of it. Go home and take care. You're American? Yeah, not a problem. Go home and take care of it. The problem is that over the years, most foreigners that come here with this attitude that Mexico rules don't really matter, laws don't really matter. If I'm here illegally, they're just going to let me go because the last 10 people told me they let them go and everything else. And maybe that's true to a point, okay? And especially we need to be very careful on Facebook because I'll give you an example. Someone will say, do I need to carry my resident card everywhere I go? I guarantee you, if I posted it on an expat Facebook group, I'm going to get 15 different answers. Everything but from don't do it, from you better do it or you're going to get stuck in jail, to, oh, well, carry a copy on your phone. Everybody has their own attitude on what to do. But the actual law is that you must have your resident card on you at all time. And if you are inspected by an immigration official and you don't have your resident card, the immigration official can detain you for an undetermined amount of time until they determine that you're here legally. Okay? So let's say you give the immigration official a hard time when he checks your ID and you don't have it. You could get stuck overnight, 2 days, 3 days, a week, until we figure out who you are and why if you're here legally. Will they release you? Yeah, sure. But I guarantee you don't want to spend 2 days or even a day in a cell, locked up in a lot of places, very bad conditions. You don't want to remain for even a day because you just didn't want to carry around your resident alien card because you were afraid you were going to lose it. Okay. Now, what do I suggest? Yeah, if you're close to home, you know what? I'll have my wife go get it. I'll have my neighbor go get it, or so-and-so has a key to the house. And sure, a lot of people have resolved it really quick. Or maybe you even talk to the immigration official and you say, look, I'm sorry, blah, 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 and they let you go. It's like a speeding ticket. They have authority to do what they need to do, or discretion, okay? So the problem we have here is you have these people saying, don't carry around your resident alien card. Or back in the day when people when immigration wasn't so strict, and I'm not saying that it's a lot real strict, it's a lot less strict than in the United States. I speak of the United States because that's where I come from. And actually it's a lot less strict. But the thing about it is that at one point in time, Mexico just let people live here, okay? If you talk to old-timers that have been here 15, 20 years, they'll even tell you, oh, yeah, for 10 years I lived here without any kind of paperwork, nothing. And nobody ever told me anything. Immigration didn't deport me. Immigration didn't pick me up. And there was even times where this individual that says laws are just suggestions, don't worry about it. He even did a video, I don't know if it's still up on his YouTube channel, that he basically said, if you knew the right people in immigration and you gave them the right amount of money, guess what? You'd get your residency without having to worry about it. Okay? But the problem is that's not now. Okay? Maybe that was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Run to the border. Actually, this person actually still says, run to the border every 180 days. And actually, that's what the video was. Live in Mexico with no financial requirements. And then when you listen to him on the video, it's basically, oh, well, just kind of go running back and forth to the border every 180 days. You get a 180-day permission. And the regularization program is going to open back up. So you just keep on doing it till they open it back up and you'll be fine. Well, the problem is that the regularization program, as of last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago, has been permanently suspended. It's not going to be brought back. Okay? And the problem we have is these people come and they take this advice. They come here, and guess what? They take this advice, and they come here. They go to the border for 180 days, and they come back, and maybe you might not get 180 days. Maybe you got an immigration official, and this is what they say: oh, 100 days, 80 days automatic. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Well, what happens if you get an immigration officer that's had a bad day and says, yeah, I don't feel like giving you 180 days. I'm not going to give you, you can't come in at all. Or what happens if you're in the computer as a repeat 180-day person the third or fourth time? Maybe you get away with it first time, second time, third time. Maybe fourth time is the golden number where they ask you, how come you've been coming and going every 180 days? So I know that people want to work around, and I understand that. And if you want to use that workaround, that's fine. It doesn't affect me, but know the consequences of that workaround. When I was talking about the tip, what the most comments I was getting, and people claiming that they're dual citizens, is on the tip, if you're a dual citizen, and this is a law in Mexico, Mexico recognizes dual citizenship at one time they didn't. If you naturalized in another country, you lost your citizenship, okay? But after 1997, I believe, Mexico said, we will recognize, if you're a citizen by birth, we will recognize it. Some people still have to go back and claim their citizenship because they lost it when they naturalized. We have some friends that had to do that. But you're a Mexican citizen. To the Mexican government, you're a Mexican citizen. And you're a Mexican citizen first, okay? So let me explain. If you're a Mexican, even if you're a naturalized Mexican citizen, to the Mexican government, you are a Mexican citizen first. The law says, and this is fraud, it's actually a fraud statute in Mexico. If you use the identity, like let's say you use your U.S. passport to do any Mexican legal, anything legal here in Mexico, in other words, but here's the thing, if they ask you for your passport, yeah, that's a requirement. But if you do any kind of transaction or legal transaction in Mexico as a U.S. citizen, you're basically defrauding the government because the Mexican government doesn't actually recognize you as a U.S. citizen. Now, they allow you to have citizenship, right? They allow you to say, you know what, I'm going to have both citizens. They didn't take away your Mexican citizenship because you have dual citizenship. But what happens? Now, if you're a Mexican citizen, they fine you. You get a big fine. If in the case of a tip, if you use your U.S. passport to get the 180 days and then get your tip so you can get around the rules because you entered as a U.S. citizen and you're a Mexican citizen, you are technically defrauding the U.S. government, the Mexican government, because you are representing that you are a U.S. citizen, not a Mexican citizen, which you are a Mexican citizen. So I did a video about this, okay? Now, here's the problem with this video. And I think I mentioned it in the video. Hold on just one second. Let me get it. I mentioned this in the video. I lived on the border. It's very common, okay, because a lot of Mexican dual citizens go back and forth. Now, there is an exception on the tip. If you are a Mexican citizen living outside the United States, what happens? You can get a tip, okay? This bit of you can't get a tip as a Mexican citizen, you can, okay? But you have to be living outside of Mexico, not outside the United States. Outside of Mexico, I think I said United States, I apologize. You have to be living outside. So what most permanent residents do, they just show up, show their permanent residency card, show their Mexican passport, and they get a tip for 180 days, okay? But what happens with dual nationals? What happens is dual nationals already got in a habit. They take their U.S. passport. They actually use their U.S. passport and say, I need an FMM for 180 days because you can't get a tip. The tip it has to match your FMM. They check in as a tourist, and then they go to SAT and basically get their 180-day tip as a U.S. citizen. And so basically, I selectively use what I want to use. That technically is illegal. If they catch you doing that, the Mexican government can confiscate your vehicle. And not only can they confiscate your vehicle, but they can give you very hefty fines. And if they confiscate your vehicle, you probably won't get it back. That's the consequences. Okay. Now, here's the problem. If you go to the border, and I'll even tell you, my brother-in-law, he does the same thing. He does this. It's a very common thing. It's very common. He does this. As a matter of fact, he was doing the Mexican citizen thing, where he was going in on his Mexican citizenship, say, I live in the United States, and he was using his U.S. passport, and the Mexican officials even told him, hey, why you have a U.S. passport? Why are you checking in as a Mexican? You can, and actually, Mexicans only get a certain amount of time a year. But on a U.S. passport, you can actually leave the country, check out, and get another tip real quick. Okay, so you can literally have a tip all year long, technically, kind of, sort of. But a Mexican can only do it for 180 days. So my brother-in-law was having to check out every time or whatever because they count your days, and he was always having to count how many days he has left that he has that. The Mexican official was sad. Actually told him, why are you doing that? Everybody uses their U.S. passport. Go get an FMM, and then you can come, and then you leave the country, and after the 180 days, and then you can renew and keep the tip for 180 days, and you can do it all year round. And this was actually suggested by the Mexican official. Why? Because everybody does it, right? So what can I imply here? Well, everybody does it. Not a problem. Even a Mexican official even told him to do it. But I guarantee you, if anything ever happens, now my brother's a lawyer here, and my brother-in-law's a lawyer here in Mexico, and he's also a lawyer in the United States. And most of the time when they stop him and they say, what do you do for a living? I'm a lawyer. Oh, okay, go ahead. So he doesn't get harassed at all. But what happens the day he does get harassed, and maybe he pulls out his Mexican ID, but he's got a tip under... They're going to say, wait a second, time out here. You know what? I'm going to take your car. Thank you very much. And by the way, you're going to have to pay all these fines. Okay. But my brother-in-law can tell him all he wants. But somebody from SAT even told me I could do this. Well, that's not the law. Sorry. And that's the way it works here in Mexico. So it's a very common thing. And all I got 20 million things, everything from, and I don't know why it's the same video, because that's why I think it might be bots, but I got everything from people in Spanish saying Americans go home, don't come here, blah, 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 to they never check. I don't need to follow the rules. I always do it all the time. Nobody's ever checked. Nobody knows any. And I'm like, dude, you need to understand, or ma'am, you need to understand, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I know everybody does it, okay? I know everybody does it. I come from the border. But I'm here to tell everybody what are the consequences if they catch you. What are the consequences if you just, I don't know, you run into that one official that wants to check everything. And maybe you accidentally said, hey, I'm a Mexican citizen, but I checked in as a U.S. Then they're going to look at you like, wait a second, you're not supposed to do that. So, and if you don't know this rule, this is not legal advice here in Mexico, but if you know this rule, you're going to know not to pull out. If you're a dual citizen and they do stop you and they start questioning you, yeah, I live in the U.S. Well, where's your permanent? I don't have it with me. I'm not are you a Mexican citizen? No. I'm not a Mexican citizen. Here's my passport or whatever. So you know not to let them know, because how are they going to know you're a Mexican citizen? But how are they going to know you're a Mexican citizen unless you tell them? So if you know the rules, and I'm not saying to break the rules, if you know the rules, you know not what not to say and what not to do. Okay? That's why I give you the information. It's not to tell you that you're going to get your car taken away. It's not to tell you that if you don't follow the law, you're going to be in trouble. But what I can tell you is if you decide to not follow the law, such as this tip thing that many dual citizens do, or you decide to run to the border every 180 days and somebody told you that you'll get an automatic 180 days and all you have to do is, and I think the other misconception is you have to leave the country for 72 hours. Okay. Actually, that's kind of a myth. That actually has been told by some immigration officials. If you run to the border every 180 days or fly home every 180 days and then fly back, you're not guaranteed the 180 days, no matter what anybody told you. Okay? Immigration doesn't have to give you 180 days. And I've even said they have a computer tracking system. They know when every entry that you come in and out of the country. So what's going to happen? Because you have to check in and check out. And right now, immigration is getting a little bit, actually, they got rid of the regularization program. They are being a lot more strict on documents, family unification. They're requiring apostillized documents now. And I think maybe it's a result of the political situation. So what happens the third time you come in for your 180 days and you don't get 180 days? And this has happened to people before. This is nothing new. As a matter of fact, during COVID, I even used the example of the individual that was from Canada and he couldn't go back home. He went to Belize, and when he was coming back in, they told him, hey, you can't come in. And he was frantically emailing me saying, what can I do? What can I do? He even traveled from Belize, flew to Guatemala and tried to come into the Guatemala border. And they told him, no, you're in the computer here. You can't come in. You already been denied. Why are you here? And then he couldn't go back to Canada because Canada had a lockdown. So he couldn't even fly home. He was without a home, period. He was homeless. Okay. Now, do you want that to happen to you? And if that does happen to you, do you have a plan? I know of several people that, I'm going to go back home for my 100 and then come back for my 180 days. And guess what? I'm just going to leave my apartment, my rent, all my personal belongings back home. They come to the airport, they fly back in, and they're like, this is about the fourth time you've entered. I'm sorry. You can't have 180 days. You can't come in. You need to go back home. Some people have been lucky enough to say, but I have my apartment, I have everything. Okay, I'll give you 5 days so you can go get your stuff. This has actually happened to people. And yeah, maybe, I don't know, 95%, they don't care. They let you in for 180 days. But what happens when you're the 5% and you don't have a plan? Okay. Are you willing to lose all your stuff that you have in your apartment? Maybe you are. Then, okay, fine, I'll go back to the U.S. Are you willing to maybe have somebody there at your apartment taking care of the apartment in case you don't get your 180 days? Or even if you get your 7 days, do you have a plan of where to go back to if you're getting sent back? These are all questions that you need to plan. And I'm telling you right now, the problem here in Mexico is it's not, and I'll tell you, I'm happy to be in Mexico. Is Mexico more laid back? Sure. Is Mexico, it's not all about the laws. It's about being laid back. It's about respect. And I love it here. But at the same time, what I try to tell people is if you're not prepared, if you're not prepared for the consequences of not following the rules, then you're going to be in a pickle, because when the rules are followed, it's not a good thing. I'll even give examples of deportations. And of course, this YouTuber will say, that does not happen. It's fake news. It's fake news. Nobody gets deported. I know people who've gotten deported. It actually happens, okay? Immigration actually stops buses, gets on the buses and checks people's paperwork, okay? I don't care what anybody tells you, they do it. Maybe not all the time. When I travel back and forth to the United States on the roads. Sometimes I hit a checkpoint. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I hit 3 checkpoints. Everything from immigration to, are you smuggling guns or money or drugs? Okay. So you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if you take that bus ride, if some immigration official is going to get on the bus. And so what I'm trying to say is you need to be prepared, because guess what has happened to some of those people, especially on the people that are traveling on the bus. There's been a lot of people where the immigration does bus checks. They stop a bus and they do immigration checks. And a lot of times it's not even looking for Americans or Canadians that are here illegally. A lot of times those bus checks are for trying to find South Americans, especially at the time when a lot of people were caravanning through. The U.S. was pressuring Mexico to do something about it. So immigration was checking. They were looking for South Americans, Central Americans. But what happened? You're the one person on the bus, even though you're an American. Guess what? The rules apply to you too. And I can tell you right now, there's even Instagram videos. There was an MMA fighter that ended up in jail, detained for 3 months. 3 months in a detention center. Because what happens if they decide to send you back to your country, especially if they pick you up on a bus? You go to a detention center, and then they have to do all the paperwork and process to get you back to your country. Sometimes they'll let you leave. They'll give you a little letter and say, I promise to leave within 90 days. Sometimes they'll say, and I'm almost sure this MMA fighter, because he was like, I don't know why, I don't come to Mexico. They promised me 180 days and they didn't give me 180. Long story short, he had an attitude. And I'm almost sure that's what got him locked up for 3 months. And he even said, I saw people in there from Canada, from the United States, that I saw one guy that had been there for 6 months. Okay. And he was from Europe, actually. And so these things do happen. And yeah, was it 1 in a million people? Yes. But what happens when he had to pay the price? It was 3 months in a detention. And he told about the horrendous conditions in there, literally horrendous conditions in those detention centers. Just like maybe people complain about the horrendous conditions in an immigration detention center in the United States. So what do you do? Okay, maybe if this guy, he was there on an FMM and he just let it expire because they told him that Mexico doesn't really care. Or I think there was, on this particular case, on the MMA fighter, if I'm not mistaken, he thought he got 180 days because they told him, and he didn't pay attention to his passport. He didn't pay attention to any. So he's like, I was here in 100. I'm out here in 100. No, you only got a week or whatever it was to do his MMA fight here in Mexico. And they know, no, you're out of status. No, but it's automatic 180. No, it's not. Here's on your passport, it says a week. So we're detaining you. And so he assumed that he got 180 days. And he was even complaining on Instagram when he was talking about, they were supposed to give me 180 days and they didn't. Well, you're not entitled. You're not entitled to 180 days. You need to understand that. No matter what YouTuber tells you that, you're not entitled to 180 days. It's a privilege. Okay. So that just goes to show you that things do happen. If this guy would have looked at his passport, he would have said, oh, shoot, I need to leave. Or, hey, I'm going to go on vacation in Mexico and I'll take my chances. But I know that I could get detained. And, if nothing happens, nothing happens. If I get detained, I'll deal with it. That is why I give you the information I give you. And I'm not trying to justify my channel. I'm just trying to tell you that when I tell you what the rules are, it's up to you to figure out what you want to do. One of the things that I'm very big on with moving to Mexico, living in Mexico, is having a plan. Just running away or saying, it's cheap there. I'm just going to go down to Mexico and I don't have a plan. I don't do my research. I don't know the laws. I don't know the rules. And the next thing you know, and here's the thing, everybody expects things to work here the same they do in their home country. And it doesn't work that way. And anybody that tells you, you can just pay off an official. I was just talking about this the other day. 1 minute. I was just talking about this the other day. When I got to Monterrey, I wanted to get a driver's license. They told me, you have to pass a driver's test. And I'm like, okay, you got to take a written test and you got to pass the, but I have a U.S. license. No, here in San Miguel, all you got to do is show another license from another country, right? But over there, no, you have to take the test. And I was taking the test on the computer. I read Spanish. I don't really write it very well, but I read it. I can understand it. But you got to understand, in my head, if someone's speaking, even speaking to me in Spanish, if they speak too quickly, I get lost. Why? Because it goes into my brain. My brain translates whatever's told to me in Spanish into English. So what I'm doing is I'm thinking in English. I'm listening in Spanish, thinking in English. When I speak, I think in English. What do I translate into Spanish? As a matter of fact, that's one of the problems that I have, is that sometimes literal translations from English to Spanish don't make sense to a Mexican. So what was I doing? And then you only have 20 minutes to finish this test. It was like 100 multiple choice questions. And I'm sitting there trying to rush, and I'm taking 3 minutes each question because, needless to say, I passed it. I'm even amazed that I passed it because towards the end, I'm just boom, 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 A, B, C, D. And I don't know if maybe I didn't pass it. And they said, no, I did pass it because the computer tells you whether you passed or you didn't. And then I went out and I took the driver's test, and it was really easy. I mean, they just, look, just drive around the block. Okay. Oh, and by the way, and she even gave me like 100 on the test, but she says, oh, but here in Mexico, it's different than the United States. You have to stop here. You have to do this. You have to do that. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Okay. Oh, okay. You're passed. So it was a process. I had to go through this process. My niece that came here to study in Mexico needed a driver's license. My brother-in-law knew the right people, and they went to the DMV, just showed her license, paid a little bit extra, and she got her driver's license. She didn't have to do it like me. So anybody that tells you on a Facebook group, oh, don't worry. And same thing with the computers. Oh, my God. I got into one of the Facebook, someone said, I got fined on my computers because I brought in more than one. And I'm only, because of my iPad or whatever. It was happening in Cancun, but this was in Puerto Vallarta. So I decided to chime in. And people were just like, this is corruption. No. The problem is that they are now considering an iPad a computer. It's not corruption. Why is it not corruption? Because it's not corruption because they're not asking you for any money, and they're fining you. They're fining you for bringing in an extra computer. They're charging you taxes for bringing it. Are you paying the official in cash? Then maybe that's corruption. Or if he's asking you for a bribe, no, you're getting a receipt. You're paying the taxes. That is the law. Okay? They're following the law. And the only difference is they classify an iPad as a computer now. Okay? So what I'm trying to say is, if you next time, and then everybody, why bring in 5 computers every time? Nobody says anything. Yeah, because you weren't inspected. Nobody stopped you. Some airports have a green light, red light. You never got the red light. No one's ever searched your bags. Maybe for whatever reason, they said you thought you looked suspicious and said, open up your backpack and you have 2 computers. And, oh, well, by the way, you can only have one. So, and you know what happened to that person that posted on Facebook? It was that person's ignorance that they didn't know the rules. As a matter of fact, they didn't even keep up with the rules because that was something that was very commonly started doing in Cancun. And it's continued. And actually, if you go and search the Facebook group, there's a bunch of posts where people got their computers, got charged the taxes on their computers. So that's my point. Anybody that tries to tell you that, oh, laws are just suggestions here, it's never enforced. Oh, don't worry, you're going to get it automatically because that's the way they always do it. I've lived here, and then the other thing too is, I've lived here for 15 years and I've never had to do this. I've lived here for 20 years and I've never had to pay duties on a computer. Well, I've lived here for 7 years and I've never had to pay duties on a computer. But the day that I do bring in an extra computer and someone says, hey, by the way, you owe us taxes. And oh, because you didn't declare it, you also owe us a fine. And actually, Mexican Customs is doing that now, even more so. I think it's kind of maybe what's going on in the United States. They're getting more strict, a lot more strict. I belong to several Facebook groups of Mexicans that are cross-back. They go into the United States to buy stuff, and they've been telling, no, I got fined because I didn't declare it and everything else. And that's why when I go, I have all my receipts. Actually, and Brett, it's $500, yes. But on the land border, it's only $300. You get an allowance of $300 per person. So if my wife and I are traveling, I can only bring in $600 worth of stuff. Now, if you're flying, you can bring in $500. And if you're flying with a family member, each family member has a $500 allowance. So let's say you have a computer that's $1,500 and you're traveling with your family, and you have 3 people in your family, you're traveling together, then you can claim their $1,500 allowance on that computer. And like Brett said, I have receipts for everything I'm bringing to show it's less than $500. But here's the thing, to expound on Brett, if I'm coming in on the airport, how many people get pulled aside? You're one of 300 people or 200 people or 100 people on a flight, and maybe 1 or 2 get pulled aside. So what's the odds of you getting pulled aside? That the problem is when you do get pulled aside, or we've run into this. I have all my receipts ready with me all the time. I run into this in the land border where everybody gets the red light. Everybody. They actually check everybody. And the last time I went, I had to show all my receipts. They even had me open up the bed of my truck, and they actually looked and they said, "What's in that box?" And it was actually a statue that I had from my old office that I brought back. And they all, "Oh, okay, it's a statue, not a problem." And here's the thing: if you don't have your receipts, they go on Google. Let's say you bought something for $200. Hey, Henry. Hey, Bruno. Great to see you, Tom. I don't know if I told you hello, but they'll go on Google and say, okay, let's say you bought the computer on sale for $500, so you're under your $500, but you don't declare it, and they'll go and you don't have your receipt. They'll go on to Google, and let's say regular price was $1,500. Well, guess what? It's now worth $1,500 because you can't show a receipt. So those are the things you need to know, and that's why I try to educate everybody. That's why I have this channel. It's not to put down other YouTubers. Hey, Gringos or Us, how's it going? It's not to put down other YouTubers for whatever they try to tell you or sell you. It's not for me to try to tell you that I'm the right and I know everything. It is to tell you that you need to be careful. You need to know the consequences of not following the rules. And if you're willing to take the risk, and I'll be perfectly honest with you, I'm not saying that I break the rules all the time, but there's been times where, well, let's just risk it and we'll see. And nothing happens. But that's because I go into it knowing the risk. And I'm already ready. Okay, we're a little bit over our $600. We're $700. Okay, if it comes down to it, I'll just pay the taxes. And I'll even tell them, here's my receipts. I have $700 worth of stuff. Where do I go pay my taxes? If they don't stop me, oh, well, they didn't stop me. We're lucky. Okay, but I'm ready to face the consequences of those rules. And I think the most important thing that everybody needs to see here is that what everybody needs to see here is that you need to know how the rules work, and it's not about finding a way around the rules. The other thing, too, that I see in many Facebook groups is, you need to do this, you need to do that. That way you can get around this and you can get around that. I was just talking to a friend of mine today. We went out to lunch today, and he said, you know, the sad part is if you weigh the consequences of doing it right, instead of trying to go around the rules, the consequences of doing it right are you're going to get it done. The consequences of not doing it right is the price you have to pay is a lot worse. Okay. And he even said that to me. We were talking about it today. And he's somebody that's like, oh no, we did everything. And he was even saying the frustration he had with him and his wife, with they with a residency and everything else, even with a facilitator. Um, and they said, "But we did everything the right way, and we had to put up with the headaches." And so that's what you have to do, is you need to understand. So let me get back to some of your comments, because I know that some people have been I'm making comments here. Alana, good to know that you don't use your mother's last name. Yeah, actually, Alana, I don't know if you live in the United States. That's not common, and I don't. And actually, my legal name here does not have a second last name. So I have to explain to them, a lot of people know already, oh, you're American, so you don't have a second last name. But there's certain forms that you have to fill out, or like you go on the computer and what's your second last name? And it's a mandatory field. It's not very, very easy. Sometimes you have to explain. Oh, hold on. Yeah. Consulates often use marriage names on Mexican passports. Yes, they do. Mexico does not. But the consulates, the reason why the consulates will use your married name is because, well, here's the thing. If you're claiming your citizenship, and I'll explain this a little bit. Let's say you were born in the United States, but you were born to Mexican parents. You don't have a second last name. Your birth certificate has, I don't know, Lance Hunter. Okay, Lance, because you're the one that says that. The consulate's going to use the paperwork that you have. Now, of course, you're going to show up with, and not only that, Lance, when you're born, the name's going to be Lance Hunter, not with your second last name. So what happens here? They can only use officially what's on your birth certificate. So what will the consulate do? They will not use your mother's last name, because on a Mexican birth certificate, it has your name, Lance Hunter Garza, or whatever the second last name is, the mother's last name. And in some cases, if it's an illegitimate child, they'll use the same last name twice. Okay. What I mean by illegitimate, they don't want to tell you who the father is or who the mother is or whatever the deal is. But that's on your birth certificate. You go to a Mexican consulate, you take your paperwork, you show your father, you show your mother's a Mexican citizen, your father's a Mexican citizen, and you claim your Mexican citizenship by birth. You can claim it by birth because you are born to Mexican parents. One of them was Mexican. They are going to put on the Mexican passport Lance Hunter. They're not going to put Lance Hunter Garza. Why? Because your birth certificate says Lance Hunter, or your passport says, American passport says Lance Hunter. So you will not, even though you're a Mexican citizen, that's the name you're officially given. That's why the consulates use marriage names on Mexican well, not necessarily marriage names, but like birth names or a marriage name because maybe you're married to somebody, not married, but you're usually it's not with a marriage. It's usually with the and also they'll use marriage names if you're doing like, for example, when we were doing the process, when I'm married to a Mexican citizen, they used our marriage certificate, and that was our married name. Actually, believe it or not, we used our U.S. marriage certificate. They didn't have to be apostolized at the time. And her second last name was on the marriage certificate, and actually she had her Mexican ID, and her second last name was on the Mexican ID, but they used that as proof that we were married. So that just goes to show you. But if you are claiming your citizenship by birth, and also they can issue your documents with your two last names, but I have seen it where, nope, your name's here on the birth certificate. That's what your name's going to be. So Tom, when you were living in Puerto Rico, yeah, Puerto Rico has got a lot of Latin American customs. One moment, please. And probably why that was happening to you, like I said, to do your taxes, you had to put that field in there. And so it's very common there in Puerto Rico. And actually, talk about having a middle name. Most Mexicans don't like having a middle name because their name is really long. Okay, and then you asked Tom what kind of expecting to happen in Mexico. And Tom is saying you use your regular name. Now, I don't want to confuse people on this name thing. If you're a U.S. citizen, you're going to come and you're going to get your residency. They're going to use the name on your passport. Okay? And actually, for any legal stuff, they're going to use the name on your passport. If you have two last names on your passport, that's what you're going to officially be known as when you're with your resident card. My resident card has my name as it is on my passport. I don't use my mom's maiden name or my mom's maiden name or last name on my name. I only do it when I have to fill out the field or they look at me like, what's your second last name? But I don't have one because no, but I need your second last name. What's your mom's last name? Diaz. Okay, boom. And they put it in the form. And actually, there's certain places where I'm known by my two last names, which legally is not right. But it's just that they want it for the form because they have to fill it out. Love your notebook. We are very lucky. Thank you very much, Susan. Oh, and actually, Tom said, don't give your name for future parents. Don't give your children middle names or make them juniors. Yeah, and actually, because that can be complicated, Tom. And I know he was just kidding. You can name them whatever you want, but that can be an issue here in Mexico. That is true. And okay. And Brett was making a comment. The bus I take from Puerto Vallarta to Mazatlan always gets stopped for an immigration check when entering Sinaloa. I've seen people get removed from when they don't have ID. Yes, and exactly. It happens very commonly. Now, Brett, if you're wise, of course, and I know you are, you take your. I carry my. You know what? I have a wallet. I got used to in the United States always carrying my ID. Why? If a cop stops me, here's my ID. Throughout the years, of course, when I was in law enforcement, I always carried my badge and my credentials. I always did. It doesn't matter. Even when, you know what, if I lose my credentials, I'll deal with the discipline of losing my credentials. I didn't, and here's the thing, I didn't carry it to get out of trouble. I always carried it because, God forbid, if anybody ever found out I was in law enforcement, I didn't do anything or I didn't identify myself, then you could be liable, not liable, but I always am used to carrying an ID, okay? No matter what, whether it was my credential, and in my credentials, I had my driver's license, okay? With my, or I would carry my driver's license. Why? Because I was just used to doing that. I do it here. If I lose my wallet, I get robbed, and then I'll deal with this process of getting another card. And I know that maybe some people don't want to deal with the process. That's up to you. I carry my ID everywhere. But what I tell people when they say, well, you know, I'm going to go on the beach and I'm going to go swimming. Yeah, of course. I don't carry my ID on the beach and I don't carry my wallet on the beach because, God forbid, I go out and swim and someone steals my wallet. But I guarantee you, whatever beach I'm in, my car's close by. I lock it in my car. And, of course, yeah, my car could get robbed. Or I lock it in the hotel room. And if immigration, for some reason, wants to pull me out of the surf and ask for my ID, then I think we can pretty much just deal with it. And I know a lot of people here in San Miguel that don't like to carry around maybe they're elderly, and they lose things real easy, and they say, I don't want to lose my IDs and my credit cards, so I don't carry anything. Well, if you're here in San Miguel, you live here, then maybe, you know what? Yeah, you can tell them. And actually, at the time that I did some videos about them doing immigration checks, immigration was in the centro here in San Miguel, just grabbing people at random and asking them for their paperwork. I don't know why it was happening. I don't know what politically was going on, but it did happen here at one time, at least for a couple of months. And I was here in San Miguel. I never got stopped. I never got asked for my ID. But if you're going to travel, make sure you take it with you. Make sure you have your FMM or whatever it is if you're on the bus, because that can definitely happen to you. Yeah, previously USA fill-in box forms had a hyphen between the two last names, so my naturalization docs printed out with first, middle, and incorrectly hyphenated last names. Yeah, that happens very often. The problem, Laura, that a lot of naturalized citizens do is they drop the second last name and they're processed through the U.S. system without the second last name. And immigration in the U.S. has never understood this two last name thing. So the solution that immigration gave was, we'll just hyphenate the last names. So you could have some issues. But the only thing that would help you, Laura, is if you have your hyphenated, I don't know if incorrectly, like if the last names were transposed, or if you actually had the two last names of your mother and your father, then you could just tell them, in the United States, they put the hyphen, but this is my, it matches. I know some people that haven't had no issues with the hyphenated. At least they were lucky that they got it hyphenated, and at least they have the both last name. Most people don't that get naturalized in the U.S. Or sometimes they do ask you for it. The Immigration Service does. I transitioned around 19. The current U.S. government may force my ID back to the old gender. That would cause mismatch with my current Mexican paperwork. Any ideas on how to prep for this? Actually, Jesse, I have no idea, because the problem you might end up having is having to do your paperwork over again. The issue you have in Mexico, what I would do, of course, you're probably going to move here. Even if they make you transition back to your old gender and your old name, what I would do is just maintain my passport. The only thing is you're going to have an issue because your passport also is tied to if you travel back and forth, your passport's going to be tied to your residency card. What I would do, Jesse, is contact a facilitator. I'm almost sure there's other individuals that have had this issue. Maybe there is an immigrant. I am not aware, because I've never dealt with that process or had anybody that dealt with the process. And actually, if you do deal with the process, let me know so that I can even inform people in your situation what to do. But there may be a process where if you show them enough paperwork, you can switch your residency. And I'm not sure if immigration is understanding on that. I couldn't tell you. But what I would do is talk to an immigration facilitator. If you did work with your facilitator from Mexico, ask them, what can I do? If they have a solution, awesome. If they don't, they just be ready for them to say you're going to have to do everything all. It's the same thing with my marriage certificate. We went back to the Registro Civil and said, hey, we want to change the name of my wife's. We can't do it. Why? Because you're going to have to go back to the United States, amend your marriage certificate, get it apostolized, and then bring it back to us. And then you're going to have to go through the whole process of registering again. So you're going to have two different registries, the one with the incorrect name and the one with the correct name. So don't be surprised if they tell you that you're going to have to do it over again. But at the same time, don't just think I'm going to have to do it over again and don't think that, because there may be a process, but you need to speak to someone that knows how the processes work. And the other thing, Jesse, I don't know how things are going to be in the United States coming out. I know that there's a lot of problems with people that have transitioned, people in the government, people in the military. Maybe all you can do is hope for in the next 4 years that this individual leaves office and the next individuals in office won't continue with these policies per se. Stephanie, you always carry your card all the time. I always do too. I mean, I have a wallet. That wallet has my credit cards or whatever and my cash. and my IDs. Actually, I have more than one ID in my wallet. Actually, I'm the opposite of being scared of losing something. I'm the opposite. Like, for example, even my U.S. passport card, I carry it with me. Number one, so that if anything ever happens, and before I become a Mexican citizen, and like I said, they don't have to call the consulate. If I need consulate assistance, I have my U.S. passport card. But a lot of times, we go back to the border. And I don't want to be like, oh, get to the border and like, I'm a U.S. citizen. Where's your passport card? Oh, I left it back home. So I carry everything in my wallet. And if I get robbed, I lose my wallet, then I deal with the consequences of losing. Hey, exactly what I'm telling you guys right now. Know the consequences. I'm willing to deal with the consequences of losing my wallet, having to get another driver's license, having to get another U.S. driver's license because I still maintain a driver's license, I have a special ID that identifies me as a retired federal law enforcement officer, which allows me to still carry a firearm in the United States. I have my resident card. I have my credit cards. So if I lose my wallet or I get robbed, I'm going to have a lot of work to do. And I'm not saying that nothing's going to happen, but I already am aware of the consequences and the work that I'm going to have to do to replace those cards. Now, the card that I use in the U.S. to identify myself as a retired federal law enforcement officer, it's a special ID they give us. That, yeah, I lock up or I don't carry it around or I only carry it in the United States when I'm there, if I remember to take it. So, and I don't really, now I do carry it when I have to every year because I have to qualify. I have to show that I'm still proficient with my firearm. I have to go back to the United States. I have to take that card so that they can fill out my paperwork to say that I'm still good. But that's the times when I take it back with me. So. Let me see here. Yep. Laura, when you're flying into Mexico as a dual citizen, you use a Mexican passport. Obviously, I use my USA passport when flying into USA. Exactly. My wife does the same thing. She carries both passports whenever she's flying, and she has to check into the U.S. as a U.S. citizen. And then, so she doesn't have to get it because she doesn't have a visa. And then when we're coming back, as a matter of fact, when we went to Guatemala, she carried both her passports. But she used her Mexican passport to enter and exit. Hey, Texas refugee, how's it going? The biggest problem are the Gen Z people remote working in Sweden. Actually, Lance, I'll let you know that it's not just, actually it became a trend in Mexico City, but it's actually becoming a trend a lot of places. Querétaro, which is right close, like 45 minutes from San Miguel de Allende, has a lot of young people. As a matter of fact, Mexico City got so congested that most of these Gen Z remote workers started looking for alternative places. You'll find them a lot, in the Rivera Maya area, Mérida, and also Querétaro. It's becoming a big thing. And they all come on this assumption that they automatically get 180 days. And that's true in a sense. The Mexican government actually passed some laws telling immigration that they basically have to get people through the immigration lines at the airport within a certain amount of time. Now, that doesn't really go for the land borders because you can cross the land border, and as you don't report to immigration, you can keep on going. I know people that even have gotten stuck without their FMM because they didn't know they were supposed to stop. But in an airport, you're always inspected. So what happens is the airport lines were getting congested. So they say you need to get people through the airport within 30 minutes, the line. So what they did was they instituted a system where you go in, they scan your passport. As long as you're good, there's no flags in the computer, you're not wanted, you're not coming back and forth for the fifth time. They basically say 180 days, boom. And even if they ask you, how many days you're going to be here? 7, 180 days, boom. It's automatic because they have a the easy button. I call it the easy button on the computer. 180 days. You're automatically given 180 days. As a matter of fact, people that were coming in on the regularization program were having issues because you had to have your what you call it, less than 180 days, and there was some. Well, I only want 7 days. No, you don't. You don't dictate how many days we give you. We're going to give you 180. Boom. So it is automatic in a sense, but and most remote workers will come here for 180 days and maybe do it twice or 3 times. But the second or third time or the fourth time, you might have issues, and you might get flagged in the computer that this is the 4th time you've done it, and you've done it back to back 4 times in a row. So you need to get your residency. So they might. But yeah, a lot of remote workers come here with I get 180 days automatic. No, you don't. That's the biggest misconception of the automatic 180 days. And some facilitators have gotten caught in this automatic 180 days thing because they'll say it, not really, how would you say, it's how I do sometimes when I say, you need a visa, your visitor's visa, and everybody corrects me. It's not a visa, it's an FMM. A visa is for, I understand that. Technically, it's not a visa, but a visa, when I say visa, visitor's visa, we as Americans or Canadians understand visitor's visa. You come in, you get 180 days or whatever, but it's not a visa. I get it. So a lot of times a facilitator will tell you, yeah, you get an automatic 180 days. But what they're not telling you is not that they're doing it on purpose. They're just doing it because so you can relate. And maybe you're only going to do it once, but if you go to that facilitator and say, I'm going to be doing it for the next 3 years, I'm positive they're going to tell you it's not going to work. So hold on just 1 second here. One thing I don't understand is people who have been doing border runs for years and years, why they didn't get their residency back then. And we all know it has gone up about 20% every year since. And actually, Tom, I don't understand it because they even came up with a program. The Mexican immigration even came up with a program saying, we understand you've been doing this for years. Get your residency. All you have to do is pay. And we know you've been living here illegally. Come on in. We're not going to deport you. And we're going to give you your permission. Why they haven't done it? Maybe it's out of habit. I don't know. Just obey the laws. Yep, exactly, 100%. Yeah, well, some other people, that's a big problem, Alana, is people come here from the United States, and I always say they expect things to go, or I'm a U.S. citizen, you can't do anything to me. Well, unfortunately, some people have learned the hard way that things don't always go your way. Retired life. My bags are always checked at the airport, green light or red. I have receipts for everything that, okay, yeah, I already brought that one up. But you know what? Also, one thing that they do at some of the airports, I don't know, when you're talking about checking your bags, Brett, what they do is they'll run it through an x-ray machine. And then I know the Querétaro airport, I fly in, there's no red light, green light. Usually there's just somebody there from the National Guard, and actually sometimes, what do you have? Nothing. Okay, keep going. Other people, they'll pull over. You'll just see random people. Hey, excuse me, come over here with your bags. We're going to check your bags. It's very common here. The red light, green light, that red light, green light system, I see it in Mexico City. When I've gone into Mexico City before, when I used to work and come down to Mexico City, I used to get the red light, green light all the time. But sometimes they would still make everybody run it through they check your bags through the x-ray machine. So if they see something that, there's 3 computers in there, maybe, well, it looks like 3 computers. Excuse me, come over here, even though you got the green light. So that does happen. Some people like to play stupid, like differences between computers, iPads, cell phones. Yeah. Now, here's the thing about a cell phone. You can bring in several cell phones, and a cell phone is, and I get it, I got an iPad mini. It's a giant iPhone. But for whatever reason, Customs has been basically saying, okay, you have your cell phone allowance and your computer allowance. What they have been doing is saying an iPad is a computer now. Even though your phone is kind of technically a computer, they're not classifying. But one thing you need to understand, everybody needs to understand, is Customs, Mexican Customs is what defines a computer, not you. Okay? So Mexican Customs tomorrow can say, your phone is a computer, so you can only bring in one computer, and then you get charged for your phone. I don't think it's going to happen, but they can actually classify whatever. Customs in every country, Mexico, United States, Canada, Europe, customs in that country defines and interprets what a computer is, or what tobacco is, or what alcohol, what's tequila, what constitutes rum, what constitutes, as a matter of fact, I'll give you a perfect example. Brazil. Brazil has an alcohol made out of sugarcane. Okay, they call it cachaça. And they export the cachaça to different countries. And I lived in Brazil for 3 years. And rum is made with sugarcane, right? So for years, when they exported or imported into different countries, the cachaça, they would import it or export it or import it into that country as rum, because there was no such thing as cachaça. And the customs said, this is made with sugarcane, it's rum. And actually, the country of Brazil fought for many years with customs authorities. So they finally put it on the tariff schedule. They call it, and not to be confused with tariffs that's going on right now. There's a harmonized tariff schedule that all the countries agree to. And the harmonized tariff schedule has nothing to do with, it does in a sense if you're charging tariffs, but it has to do with when a product is imported into all the different countries, it's uniformly, defined. So, but customs in any country can take that definition and actually change it. So, and what I mean by change it, if it's close, like an iPad has a screen, like a computer, and usually these harmonized tariff schedules have the definition of a computer, an item with a keyboard and a whatever, and then they can say, okay, this has a keyboard, this has a screen, it's a computer. So that's how it works. And this is not just in Mexico, it's in the United States, everywhere you go. I was so happy to get the green light the last time. Yeah. And I actually know somebody that got the green light, and they actually were bringing in some sound equipment, and they had asked me, what do I do? I said, do you have the receipt? Yeah, just gave the receipt, because they're going to put your stuff through the x-ray machine. It's going to go off if they do. And he had to put it through the x-ray machine, and sure enough, hey, what do you have in there? It's electronics. And he had the receipt, and they let him keep going. So... And actually, they didn't even open up his Pelican case. Oh yeah, I saw a guy argue about the red light inspection. They took his dash out of the truck and did not put it back in. Yes, Lance. One thing you need to understand, even when you're going back to the United States, if they suspect, like, let's say the drug dog, I don't know, I'm not saying anything. Let's say, and I'm not saying the drug dog's false alert. Let's just say you were smoking marijuana or something, but you don't have any marijuana on you, but you were smoking it like 3 days ago, and the odor's still there, and the dog alerts to your truck. Customs in the United States will tear apart your truck, even though you don't have anything. And if you don't have anything, they'll still tear apart your truck and say sorry. And if you want to get reimbursed for the repairs, go through the legal process to sue us. And the same thing can happen in Mexico. These are when you enter into a different country, even if you enter back into your home country, like I'm going back in the United States, if they have reason to believe that I'm carrying something illegal, they can tear apart my truck. They tear apart. Trust me. I mean, I was in the business. They tear apart door panels, everything. So, yeah, Mike, the peso is looking good. I did that about the value of the peso. Was it last week or the week before? But yeah, it's steadying around 19 point something. So we'll have to see what happens. I don't know. I guess Brett. I don't know if I missed the other comments. Shows what you can bring in. Yeah, there is a. You can go into the website and it'll. You do get like allowances for tobacco, allowances for. There's different things that you can bring in, and then there's also the allowances. I think for computers and electronics. Yeah, exactly. And actually, the hunter, actually, Lance, that is a social thing here in Mexico because women don't change their name. So, for example, if your name's Mary de la Garza and de la Garza Palacios, okay, let's say your wife's name is that, she carries that name for the rest of her life, okay. But what they will do socially is say, I'm Mary de la Garza Palacios de Garcia. So basically, the way the name works is it's not official, it's not legal, but socially, you're saying, I'm Mary de la Garza, Mary de la Garza de Garcia, or whatever, or your second last name, de Garcia, means that I'm married to Garcia. And some Mexican consulates will use that because they don't have the second last name. They'll put that on the passport as kind of the married name. It kind of, I don't know how to explain it. It kind of identifies you. That's the way they have to make things fit into the box, and that's how they do it. Michael, yeah, the Mexican consulate. If you did your thing through the Mexican consulate, they can put both last names. Because they understand that it doesn't work that way. But other Mexican consulates won't use a second last name because it has to be what's on the birth certificate. It just depends. Uh, Actually, Jesse, if you're here on an FMM, you carry your FMM and your passport. If you're a resident, you carry your resident card. You don't need your passport. Your resident card identifies you as a legal resident here. But if you're on an FMM, you have to have your passport and your FMM. Now, here's the thing. They're not issuing the FMM anymore. At 90% of the airports, they just stamp your passport. So what you would need, if you don't have an FMM, you need your passport with the stamp in it so that you can show it to them. Jimmy Thomas, as a permanent resident in Mexico, I understand I can't get a tip for my U.S. car. If my Mexican spouse gets a tip for the car titled to my name, would I legally be allowed to drive the car while my spouse drives into Mexico? Actually, Jimmy, here's the thing there, and hopefully I got your question right or understood your question right, but hold on just one second here. Yes, it is true. You can't get, as a permanent resident, you can't get a tip. Let's say your wife is a U.S. citizen, she can get a tip. Or let's say she's a dual citizen. We're not gonna go there like I did earlier, but she checks in, she gets an FMM. The only thing that you might need to take with you, if the car's in your name, take a marriage certificate that shows you guys are married so she can get the tip. Because when you get the tip, it has to go under the title has to be in the name of the person, or if it's a title of a company, you have to have some kind of letter or whatever. But we used to take our marriage certificate, my wife and I, when this was before when you had FMM. Your wife gets the tip. Okay, you can try the. Here's the thing. It's kind of a weird thing. They're not going to get you in. You're not going to get in trouble. But, and this is the advice that's given. But it's good advice. Technically, the law says permanent residents can't drive a foreign plated vehicle. Mexican citizens can't drive a foreign plated vehicle. Well, wait a second. But Mexican citizens living outside the United States can get a tip. But then how come? Okay, there's a customs exception. Okay, um, for Mexican citizens living outside the United States. There's also a customs administrative exception for immediate family members. So, for example, your wife gets the tip. You're a permanent resident, but she's your wife. Make sure you take proof that she's your wife, for sure. She's your wife. You can drive, it's immediate family only. Your mother, your father, your son, your daughter, or your wife can drive the vehicle if they're Mexican citizens or permanent residents. That exception was made. For example, my son lives in Mexico. I took my vehicle and then my son has to go and buy beer or something like that. You can drive the vehicle. Now, if the person isn't an immediate relative, like your spouse or whatever, the tip holder needs to be in the car at the time. So you can technically, even if you don't have proof that she's your spouse or you don't want to deal with it, as long as your spouse is with you, the tip holder is in the car, you can drive the vehicle. That's how the exception works. Now, here's the problem. Not everybody knows about the exception, so you might get an official that says, "Oh, this isn't true. This is not. This you can't drive." Hold on. If you go to SoniaDiaz.Mexico MX, Sonia Diaz has a copy on her website. When she has, if you go to the section of her website, and I know this is where I can find it. Sonia Diaz, she's a facilitator here in Mexico. If you go to her website, under tips and everything else, she actually has a copy that you can download of the customs regulation. What I would do is carry that in your glove compartment. So if you do get that one official that says, no, you're a permanent resident, you can't drive. There's no exceptions. Wait a second. Here's the exception. Usually when you show them the exception, they're going to say, where did you get this? Oh, it's a customs regulation. This is what I was, and then they'll usually let you go. I have never heard of anybody getting in trouble, but I would do that just as a, how would you say, an extra precaution. Christopher, I just carry my resident card. I don't carry my passport. The only time I carry my passport when traveling domestically is when I know I'm going to go to the United States. So I don't carry my passport. And anytime I've been asked for any kind of identification, I just pull out my resident card. Even when I've been asked by immigration, because immigration has checked, when they get up on the bus, I just pull out my resident card, show them my resident card, we're fine. The only time you really have to carry your passport is if you're here on an FMM. Yes, Stephanie, as a spouse, you can. That was what I was just explaining. And your spouse can get the tip too. The only thing you have to do with SATs, some SATs are really, but the only thing you have to do is show that you're married. Take your marriage certificate along with all the other paperwork, because especially if the tip, but you shouldn't have a problem. I've crossed the board when we used to get tips all the time. Sometimes the car was under my name, sometimes it was under my wife's name, and if I got the tip one time and it was under my wife's name, we had to show our marriage certificate to show, well, even though it's under her name, we're married, and they'll give you the tip. Yeah, you carry both of them. I do. I carry both of them around too, Alana. Also, I carry my U.S. passport card just in case anything ever happened. Now, it's obvious that I'm a resident, so, but if I have my U.S. passport card, I can be, if I get arrested for whatever reason, which I don't think I'll ever get arrested, but you never know, I can identify myself as a U.S. citizen and get consulate protection. Now, if I become a Mexican citizen pretty soon, I won't get consulate protection. They don't have to notify the consulate. Diana, I love talking about my experiences. Thank you very much, Diana. Yeah, and actually, Tom, this is an advice that's always given about taking photos. In the old days, photos weren't, and some people take a photo or a photocopy and then get it notarized by a notario, and supposedly it makes it legal. But apparently, copies aren't legal here in Mexico. Now, I think they're a little bit more lenient. Now, what good thing about photos on your phone and everything else is if you ever if you ever lose your stuff and you need to prove, hey, you go to the police station, here's my stuff, I got my stuff stolen. The police are a little bit more lenient if it's on your phone because we're in a digital age now. But in the old days, if you just had a copy, it was like, no, this is illegal. It's illegal to carry copies here, unless it's notarized. Hold on, just one second. Question: if you fly in with my wife with two cell phones, a Google tablet, an iPad that is worth less than 500, what do we need to do? Nothing, actually. The only thing that you do need to do is show that it's worth less than 500, because your wife and you traveling together have $1,000 allowance. That's number one. Number two, you have a Google, even though that you have a Google tablet and an iPad, you got to remember it's per family. So it's per person in the family. So technically, the Google tablet, you declare one is declared under you, one is declared under your wife, so you don't have two computers. You only have one computer per person, if that makes sense. And if there's any question, and those things are worth less than $500. Now, here's the thing: if you have to have the receipt that it's worth less than $500, or you bought it for less, or if you go Google it, like if it's an Amazon tablet that's $200, you can say, look, it's only worth $200. And if you want to really get on the computer and say that I have to pay taxes, it's worth less than my $500 allowance. So you shouldn't have any problem. And two cell phones, it's one cell phone per person. Even though and here's the thing you need to understand, and this is what I've told people, and a perfect example of what happened to my friend. He was like, yeah, the equipment's worth over $800. I said, are you traveling with your wife? Yeah. You combine the two, you have $1,000. Oh, cool. So as long as you're traveling with your wife, you have the $1,000 allowance, not 500. And then, like I said, it's computer. It's a computer. So if you have two and you got two people traveling, it's one computer per person. So YouTuber William Towden recently got 180 days and thought about regularization, but did a border run to Belize to save money. 2 weeks later, they ended the program. Yeah, and that William Towden, many years ago, a couple of years ago when I started my YouTube channel, he was very arrogant, and I told him I did a video about 180 days, and he tried to make fun of me. I do it all the time. There's not a problem. He's one of those that did that to me. I actually hid him from my channel because he was very arrogant, very sarcastic, and actually he paid the price with the regularization. That happened to a lot of people. But that's a perfect example. He's the one that was making fun of me, saying that I was full of doo-doo because I was trying to make a video that, well, this is going to catch up to you, whatever. And look what happened to him. He actually had to pay the price. Not maybe he's going to keep coming in for 180 days, but be careful when you're being arrogant like that. Deanna J, they didn't stamp my passport this time, but they gave me a tiny receipt with a QR code. Yeah. Yeah, Diana, what I would do is take a screenshot of that FMM so that you can have it, or keep that QR code there so that if in your passport, and when they give you if they check your paperwork, you give them the QR code. They can actually scan it with the phone and your stuff will pop up. That's your proof. That's your FMM. And it was at the Ciudad Mexico. Yeah, Mexico is the one. Mexico City is a very progressive airport. Most of the stuff that's going on with this stamping and not stamping and getting automatic 180 day, all of it starts usually in Mexico City. Vic Chavez, my identity was stolen and someone was removed in my name. They detained me, told me to get a lawyer. Vic, I don't know. Maybe you're talking about the U.S. If you're talking about Mexico, I have no idea, but this is kind of a Mexico channel. I couldn't, even though I worked in the immigration system over there, if it was in the U.S., they probably gave you a very solid advice. You're going to need a lawyer to do whatever. How it'll turn out, I couldn't tell you. Oh, you can do the process remotely. That's awesome. Actually, Michael, one of the things that we were talking about, I think with my wife, is how hard it is to get a passport because it was so backlogged. But it's good to know that you can do the renewals so you don't have to do it. Yeah, the tip holder has to have, actually, you have a good point, Gringos or Us. The tip holder, here's the thing, the tip holder has to have their paperwork. You got to remember the tip is tied to your FMM. So you need to have not your ID, you have to have your passport and your FMM that coincides with the tip. Okay, because what they're going to say is, even though it's under your wife's name and you might have a US ID, they're going to say, well, where's your permission to be here? Because if your FMM expires, doesn't matter when your tip expires. If your FMM expires, your tip is no longer valid, if that makes sense. Okay, thank you for the thought about the very helpful. We have a Mexican car that stays in Mexico, but on rare occasions we have wanted to get a tip to drive to Maine to Mexico. Not a problem, Jimmy. We have both Mexican cars, but I'm a permanent resident. I just went with a Mexican car, but you can just make sure that, like I said, you have your paperwork in order and also prove that you're married. And actually you have to have your marriage certificate. If it's under your name, you have to have your marriage certificate anyway to get the tip. So you're going to have a copy of your marriage certificate with you. So. Oh, wow. That it is unusual. Usually they take your word for it, but I'll give you Jimmy, this is a perfect example of somebody saying we have to follow the rules. You claim you're married to get the $1,000 exemption. You need to prove to us that you're married. And that's a perfect example of what I'm trying to stress tonight is, yeah, the law's there. You have to be married. How do you prove you're married? Have a marriage certificate, right? You ran into an immigration officer or customs officer, not immigration, customs probably, because you're talking about the 1,000. You ran into a customs officer that decided to say, I'm going to follow the law. You need to prove you're married. And it's very unusual. But that's the issue that you could have. And this is a perfect example. Thank you for bringing that up, Jimmy. It actually drives my point home. Yeah, exactly, Gina. You needed your ID. Um, they were going to write you a ticket because you didn't have it on there. Actually, I'm surprised because usually on the tip, you need to have your paperwork squared away because they can actually, if they don't and they want to follow the law, you have an issue. Yeah, they wanted to see an ID, and actually, sometimes they'll go further, Gina, or Mark, whichever one out of the Gringos or Us. And actually, I think it's Gina because you said Mark. But sometimes they'll actually ask you for your FMM that coincides with the tip. You got to remember what happens sometimes is the tip can get issued for 180 days. But let's say I go into Mexico. They give me an FMM for 180 days. I leave Mexico, right? And I get the tip for 180 days. Okay, but I leave Mexico. I come back into Mexico, get another FMM for 7 days. Okay? When they review your paperwork, they're going to look at the expiration date of the tip. The FMM. And they're going to say, well, yeah, I know you left. I know the tip's good for 180 days. You didn't turn it in, but now you're legally in the country for 7 days. So your tip's only good for those 7 days that you got the permission, even though your tip expires in another 3 months. So most of the time, you're very lucky they didn't ask for they just asked for the ID. Because most of the time they'll ask for your FMM or your passport to show that you're stamped, to see. Now, you'll see that at some SAT checkpoints where they really are trying to be aggressive about enforcement, but you gotta, and this is another example. Okay, we'll let you do it. Follow-up question. I think I understand saying myself need. No. What I'm trying to say, you don't need an FMM because you're a permanent resident. Your wife, let me see if I can explain this, Jimmy. Your wife, even though she's a dual national, and what we were talking about before, she's going to do what everybody does, and she's going to give her U.S. passport. Now, she could technically, because you live in the United States, show proof that she lives in the United States and get one as a Mexican citizen. But if you want to go the other route, which is a lot easier, or even if customs tells you, just check in with she's going to need an FMM, okay, to go along with her tip. So she'll check in with immigration to get her 6 months permission, or 50 days or 30 days or 60 days or 180 days. And then you go from there to SAT with her permission with her FMM, and then get the tip. So your wife is the one that has to get the tip. Now, I do know I have a friend here in San Miguel that his wife is a dual national. And I told him, well, technically, legally, you're supposed to check in as a Mexican citizen, have proof that you're living in the United States. They tried to do that, and guess what the border official said? What, you're a U.S. citizen too? No, you need to do the FMM, and you need to get the tip through that. Yes, your Mexican spouse, if she's a dual national, she needs to get, or if she's a permanent resident in the United States, she can take out a tip with her permanent residency card. But if she's a naturalized citizen or dual national, not naturalized U.S. citizen or a dual citizen, maybe she got her citizenship through her parents, she will need to either check in as a U.S. citizen, a Mexican citizen living outside the United States, which they probably won't do, or check in as a U.S. citizen and get an FMM, basically. Because you need that. Now, if you check in as a Mexican citizen, and you say, I need then you don't need an FMM. But if they make you check in as a U.S. citizen, then I gave my friend advice to try to check in as a Mexican. But the problem with Mexican citizen, they're going to say, how do we know you're living in the United States? And he's a permanent resident. You live in Mexico. So probably her best bet is to show her Mexican passport, get her Mexican FMM, and then get the tip. Hopefully that helps. Oh. All right. I'm at an hour and 48 minutes. I actually went over. I'm back to the 2-hour days, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up right now. And we'll see you next week. Hopefully, actually next week. Next week, I might not be on Sunday. My mother-in-law and father-in-law are coming here to live. Actually, we took them back to Monterrey, but we're in a situation. I've told people about my mother-in-law and father-in-law's situation. They're going to be arriving next Sunday. So I don't think I'm going to be available next Sunday. So it's probably going to be on Monday or on Saturday. So just keep an eye out on my Facebook group, or hit that little bell and subscribe, and then you'll get notification. Thank you all for joining me tonight. Like I said, I will continue with these live streams every week hopefully, and otherwise, or if I can't do it, I'm sorry. But, and hopefully I'll get back to the videos soon. I just got so much going on in my life right now that it keeps me busy. Some of it's stress. Some of it's just, like I said, my personal life is my priority. My family's my priority. So, they come first. And so if I can't make it, then we'll see what happens. And actually, I don't think I can do it on Saturday. Mark and I'm going to be probably in Querétaro. We already made plans to go, but at the same time, I might not be able to make it, Mark and Gina. Just letting you know, because my in-laws are flying in over the weekend, and we have a lot to do because we have to prepare the place where they're going to live. They're not going to come live with us. They're going to be living in an apartment. So hopefully hopefully I can make it next weekend. So just to give you a heads up, Gina. So we'll see you guys later. But I'll let you know. By the way, I'm sorry I got off track, but I'll let you know, guys, if we're not going to make it. But we do have plans so far to make it, to see you guys next weekend. Thank you, guys. And as I always say, and I'll let you know, Gringos are, and I'll let you know about the cake if we can't make it. But I'll let you know earlier this week. And as I always say, as always, stay safe and stay informed.